Call to order the Planning Commission special meeting of Tuesday, October 27th, 2009. Those who call the roll, please.
Sure. Chairperson John Craycraft.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Jason Hinkle.
Here.
Commissioners Clint Paulson.
Here.
Lois Harden here. James McGinnis. Bob McCool.
Here.
Frank Christus
Here.
Rochelle Rittmaster. Here. Tom Ricker.
Here.
Assistant Town Manager Matt Bagley.
Here.
Planner Fred Fox.
Here.
Attorney Carissa Eckhout. I'm not sure.
You got it here.
Okay, thanks. That's item 2 on the agenda for tonight. Item 3 is a continued meeting on the preliminary plan development zone district plan case PPD ZDP 2009-1 and preliminary plat case PP-2009-1 for the Oxnard property. We have, at the conclusion of the last meeting, we recommended approval of annexation.
Correct.
And we were about to begin discussion on the PPD and ZDP portion of the project, and I assume we can discuss the preliminary plat, or do we have to do these in order? Is that the recommendation?
Yeah, I mean, I would start with the PPD, ZDP, and then finish with the plat. I'd also, if I may, like to just remind the commissioners that the public hearing was closed at the last meeting. Also, I wanted to mention I've heard from one planning commissioner that has to leave at 8. I mean, that's just for your knowledge. And then can ask staff questions, but we can't take any public comment.
Right, no more public comment. Right.
Also, just for the record, Commissioner Cristisato, can you just let us know whether you've had an opportunity to review the tape of the last meeting?
Yes, I picked up a DVD from Phyllis Harden and watched it at home, along with watching it that night some.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Does that qualify him to participate in any
Yep.
way? Okay. Okay. Good. So we are discussing the PPD ZDP. We did a staff presentation on the annexation. Was that inclusive of everything we're going
It
to
was
do?
at that time. It was the annexation, PPD, ZDP, and
All of it, right?
It was all of it.
Okay. So we don't have
We're happy
anything.
to
We don't have
go.
anything else to do there.
No. And also, I'll mention that we have in the staff report a set of conditions that the staff is recommending for each of those 2 remaining items. And we can either, when the commission feels they're ready, we can go through those one at a time, and if you'd like to get an idea if you want to include those or not, and anything else that you'd like to include.
Right.
One thing that's not on our recommendations that I'll mention that we've had a chance to discuss internally is on the maximum lot coverage, and it's our recommendation, staff's recommendation, that be reduced to 45%.
Why 45?
Was that the number I threw out?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why 45? Because it's an arbitrary number and it doesn't exist anywhere in any of the documents that we already have.
In my case, that's the case.
Excellent.
But I don't know about staff.
Excellent. That's perfect. We'll have an arbitrary number, just tossing it down.
Well, they asked for 55 in the.
And our code clearly says 40. So where does the 45 come from?
Again, in my case, I just threw it out there.
Okay, just a second.
Well, and to be clear, I mean, the 45 comes up specifically different from the code, obviously, because that's part of the never-ending list of things that can change for a PD. So, just so everybody, for everyone else's
Edification.
edification, it's not unusual for a number like that to get set.
And Fred has
Yeah,
I don't know if any of you had a chance to just sort of ballpark the coverages of the lot scheme. They had a schematic lot scheme, I think on sheet L7. So if you ballpark those lot coverages, they're, I think, between about 34 and 49%. And so that's another reason that number was sort of looked at as sort of a compromise. And the developer, I think, could live with that. That's sort of where the number came from, a number of spots. And then also, this is a PD, so we have the ability to scooch it up if you want from the code limit of 40%.
You took it from L7? Is that what you said?
L7, yeah. That lot scheme, typical lot scheme.
Okay.
That looks right. Is that the landscape from that landscape, L7?
Yeah.
Okay. So typical, all right.
You kind of stare at that, and I just did some ballpark calculations on the lot coverage. You know, the footprint versus the lot, and they're all 7,200, I believe, square foot lots.
Up to 9,100, right?
Well, yeah, but these lots are the 7,200 feet. They're the smallest. And there's a number of those throughout the development, but there are some larger as well.
So you came up with, what is the biggest number, 34%?
No,
39.
no.
49.
39 to
These four, I believe the ballpark number was about 49%.
Yeah.
So that means that particular lot, they'd have to fool with the building footprint if the limit was 45. But the rest of them were like 34 and under 45 of these four different schemes.
Right.
One was 44 and a point, 44, 40, 34, and then the one was 49.
Okay.
And that's just an approximate, you know, I didn't go around every corner, I just averaged it. That's pretty close.
That's inclusive of the garage?
It's the footprint, yes. You don't count the drive, but you do count the garage.
Oh,
Although
yeah.
that's not considered living space. But
No, we'll make that clear.
This is getting into the weeds a little bit, but I guess it may affect which way I would lean with this. We've dealt recently on Chapter 16 with exceedances that are considered minor or major. With something like this quantity, when things are checked out, if something comes in at 49 or 47%,
it's
what are the
given-
developer's options?
A given
Well-
lot, you mean?
there's
Like
a
a
couple
given
of things.
lot.
Let's say there's several levels, couple levels. One is, let's say, for instance, we've got these 7,200 foot lots. They need to have more than 45% for a lot of the things that the people want, or let's say the clients. I don't know whether this is true. This is a scenario. It's just a scenario. So they can come in then for an amendment to the PD to increase the lot coverage, and we go through that. And if it's more than 10% upgrade from 45%, then we'll have to go through a full-blown deal. But that's something staff would decide.
Okay.
The other thing is at the time of building permit, each lot will have a building permit. So at that point, you know, this needs to be checked. The setbacks need to be checked. The square footage, the lot coverage needs to be checked. And if all of a sudden it's over 45%, and that's the limit if that's what's recommended, if it's over 45%, then I got two options. You can try for a variance, or you go back to the drawing board. So I don't know, is that what you were?
That's what I expected.
for?
I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure I understood how that applied to the PD details.
Yeah,
Thanks.
because it'll be on the building permit, and the plot plan for each house will have its own building permit. So that's how you check it.
Okay. I guess we should open it up for discussion, and items that you're concerned about within the PPD, ZDP, that we want to discuss further. So I will start with whoever wants to start.
I guess I'd be game to was curious about staff perspective on both the street lights and park area lights. I think we talked about them a bit last week. I know that I guess this seemed like one example where the developer was intentionally avoiding those. I wasn't sure whether further discussion had occurred with staff, or you kind of agreed to disagree at some point. as far as that recommendation
Agree to
goes.
disagree with the
To add
applicant?
lights, yeah, I know. The staff recommendations
Staff
on our
recommendation.
Our
document are to
recommendation,
add
yes, to
lights.
add some mid-block lights on 6th and 8th, right at the point where the trail starts, and then provide some pedestrian lighting
In the middle of
in
the
the middle.
park.
Right, so that people, when they're out at night, they can see what the heck they're doing. Now, our photometric requirements for pedestrian lights are pretty low, so the pedestrian lighting with a downcast type of a structure, if it's on a pole, should be fairly subtle. But at least it lights the way when people are out walking at night, and that happens. So that's what our feeling is. And if you add a mid-block street light on 6th and 8th, then that starts the trail, gives you you can see where the trail starts and whatever, and then there's down the way.
That would have to meet
there's a
street
light.
lighting requirements, right?
Pardon me?
That would have to meet street
That
light
would-
level requirements,
That
not,
would meet the lighting, they'd have to do the photometrics for that.
yeah.
Well, I think the applicant, they had pedestrian lights, not
They had,
street lights.
they had a couple of pedestrian lights. If you look at the drawing, their drawing shows a pedestrian light, I believe, one's on 6th and one's on 8th at the start of the park. Our thought was to switch out with a street light, because there are street lights planned along 6th, Cold Creek Drive, and then there's, I believe, one at each end of Charles. But there's nothing in between.
Right. Yeah, I remember
So our
that.
thought, so rather than having two pedestrian lights on 6th and 8th, you have a street light. And then our suggestion would be to have some pedestrian lights along that pathway, so that people they're not walking in the total dark when they're out there at night, particularly at this time of year, which is dark early, and it'll get earlier once daylight saving goes away.
Well, I thought that actually that the applicant made a compelling statement about lighting, and that the homes may have carriage lights. They also may have there's also ambient light that's coming from the homes through the windows or whatever. And if you walk through Rock Creek, and I realize there's and even Original Town, there's a lot of light that's coming from various sources at different places. It's not maybe as directed as what you're referring to, but it's not like you're out in the dark.
Well, we're talking about, out in the middle of the path, which is, beyond people's yards and in the back.
Are you talking about the path that goes through the park area?
Yeah, it goes through the park and it goes also north and south.
I don't know. I mean, there's lighting coming from the back windows of these people's homes, I think.
Well, I don't know
my
if
feeling
they're-
on it. I'm sort of the opinion that they're I'm with them that adding more light is not necessarily a better thing.
What type of lights are being recommended? I mean,
Well,
are you talking about low light, low
We're talking
pedestrian
about
path lights? Or are you talking about
pedestrian
lights like
For the internal, for the trail through Track C, we're talking about low pedestrian lighting.
Just don't do it like in Sagamore, where if our pedestrian lighting is awful. Again, lighting can be great. You got to just direct it to
Right,
what
it is
it's
with
meant to light up, not
downcast light.
light up
And
everything
that type of
else.
detail will flesh out in the final
Right,
development.
yeah.
Right.
I
It
think
would be a
now
downcast
people are more
light.
aware of how
But you're
bad
recommending a
lighting
low
can be.
2
It
foot.
would be
3 foot.
either on a short pole, the other option is bollards. I think it's the design issue that if, for example, this is an amenity that the planning commission or ultimately the board recommends or decides to have, then we'll deal with the fixture at the final development plan. And then it'd have to meet our photometrics for headlights.
Vandalism came up as a concern for the low level direct down lighting. Any
I don't have any
Perspectives
comment
on
that. Vandalism is vandalism.
Haven't
Other than
had
a
any
subdivision
second.
that has pedestrian lights.
Since they had
Every once in a while they go out, and there's
they have those
vandalism or they
low
just burn
level
out.
ones?
Yeah,
So they have to be fixed. So that's all I can say.
Okay.
But they're handy when you're out at night.
Okay. That's a tricky one.
Is a tricky one. One of the suggestions we talked about, I think during the annexation discussion was some synergy or connection between Town 9 and the adjacent park that's part of this development, parkland in the area, including street, traffic calming, or some pedestrian type crossing. Sort of link the two parks together. I continue to think about that idea a little bit more, and even with some sort of, with something, maybe a bulb out or something there, but also something on the Town 9 side that was a similar gateway or something to Town 9 and this park. So you sort of tied them together. Not, I don't know.
Well, I think it's a good idea. I mean, the problem I think I've had, or staff has, is we're not quite sure of what is planned up in the Town 9 in terms of this particular detail. At least I'm not. And I didn't get any direction from Juanita that it needs to be here or it needs to be there. So at this point, they're showing crossings at 6th and 8th. I mean, that was something that staff wanted them to add as a crossing. It could be a little bit more fluid, so at the time they come in with final development plan, if they're firm, there's a firm idea about where a good crossing should be, it could be right at the center of that park, for that matter, or both of those two streets. But at any rate, that could be something that worked out. But the idea of now mandating a street crossing or crossings is at least a basic sort of amenity that needs to be maybe possibly decided at the FTP. I don't know. Because I didn't get a clear statement from the Parks Department that, you know what, this crossing should be here at this point.
And I don't. I'm not trying. I don't want. I'm not trying to design this.
Neither are we.
Idea. I just throw it out there as some way to tie.
They should be tied.
These together. So
I would agree with that.
Okay.
Definitely.
Whether it's at 6th or 8th or a midpoint
That's my
from the park or
personal
whatever.
thought, but at our comments, they went ahead and on their design, they showed it at 6 and 8. Is that most optimal? I'm not quite sure, but at least they acknowledged that there needs to be a crossing that they would develop on the portion of the street that they're making.
I think the crossings at 6th and 8th makes the most sense to me, because you've got people down on Charles. There's no way for them to get through Tract C other than going down 6th or 8th. So to have the crosswalks at the street seemed to make the most sense to me. And while we're on this topic too, we've had, do we put irrigated sod in Tract C versus more on the native grass side, because it's more consistent with what you've got to the south of the houses on Charles, and to the east, you've got the nice irrigated sod at the Town 9 park. I think the folks that are living here, or that they're going to be marketing to, they're not wanting to buy another park. They're wanting to perhaps have native grasses out the back of their house. I like the trails. I like the idea of the lighting through the trails, but I'm not sure that I'm on board with the irrigating and creating another irrigated park in the middle of that.
Yeah, I agree. Well, it's worth it. Okay.
Where do you want to do a bulb out for what?
Are you
Keep it up here, James.
I merely suggested. No, we were just talking about tying Town 9 to the park connection.
Yeah, and I'm having trouble finding where that here. This. Oh, okay.
Here versus here.
I think maybe it is appropriate to have those connections here.
Because there's
there's
nothing
6th and
to get
8th,
you
but
through here. So these people have got to walk down there.
Right, so definitely that's necessary.
Right. So to have a third is overkill.
Well, unless you happen to be riding your bike, in which case coming up here and going straight across is what's going to happen anyway, regardless.
Or
You're
go
not
down the
doing
sidewalk.
that. You're not doing that. It's 100 feet.
you're just encouraging people to go one way or the other if you do that. But people are going to cross, and Coal Creek isn't the busiest street in the whole world.
This is also not that far, remember?
Right. Understood.
It's 100 and...
That's what we were talking about.
But having a connection on the other side to the trail, I mean that's what we're getting. It's not. I mean, if you don't want that, you're going to end up with sociopath.
Right.
Across that other side of the park.
Sociopaths?
Sociopath, no, sociopath, social trail on the other side of that walkway. I wouldn't see any harm in just. I mean, whether you put an official crosswalk, well, I would think you should put a little crosswalk there with
Or
a
at
connecting
least-
trail.
At least
onto
no
the-
painted
the
parking
road.
spaces there, so that, or no parking, like, so that that's not a, at the very least, there should not be the ability to park a car right in front of that.
Well, if you look at it from a continuing trails perspective, so if that's a continuation of it, that is a trail that's coming out, it connects up to another trail, that trail, follows on rather than jumping on a sidewalk and then back onto a trail. I mean, that's, by using, you've got a connecting trail that's coming from original town to the east. So in that case, you have to go to a sidewalk and then do a sidewalk to get across rather than just staying on a trail and continuing to walk. I'd be in favor of just continuing that trail across Coal Creek.
That's
Connecting
What
it
would
up
you
with
think
the
about
park
the 6th and 8th
system.
Street?
That's necessary.
Crossings.
That's a crosswalk.
Okay.
I think that's required.
Okay.
And that we would assume that would be a similar kind of bulb out like there is on other places along the Coal Creek.
Yeah,
I mean, to match what's.
right.
Okay.
Yep, that Coal Creek streetscape design will be matched.
And is this still a straight? Does this straighten out Coal Creek?
It does.
Is this, so,
Regarding the part two, there were comments. I guess we can't really talk about this because we didn't present it in the public hearing or it wasn't presented to us. But there was comments from ProStack or OSAC, ProStack and OSAC on the development that I think we're going to go to. At least at the ProStack meeting, we discussed having it go, have them bring it up or to the town board in their review and approval.
OSAC had an opportunity to review.
The trail connection.
And they're in the staff report, those comments.
Oh yeah, right. OSAC, but not ProStack. We didn't talk about it till last Wednesday.
We hadn't had an opportunity to review, but we're going to present their comments to the board when they receive.
But one of the Parks and Rec staff's comments was some type of structure, shade structure
Right.
in the park with
Yeah.
barbecue or something. And
Yeah, but if the commission would rather see that as a natural, native grass landscaping,
So much for that.
yeah.
You can't have a pavilion without
Well,
irrigated turf.
yeah,
Well, no, you can. You can.
just on the trail, off
yeah.
the trail,
There's no.
or a small section.
I think
that's
that'd be good.
That's,
I mean, there's not even a place to sit down on these trails.
but you don't need a fully
Those are-
irrigated park to have benches and.
No,
I mean,
you're right.
That's
But
fine.
it's 3 acres. I mean, this is 3 acres.
For the kind of, I guess the problem I have, and I feel like we're getting into a little bit of the deep design details, but for this kind of a product, I don't see that feature getting used as much. I see people, I guess when you have empty nesters, they're going to have friends over and they're going to be sitting on their patios, enjoying that view out the back rather than toting a bag full of stuff to barbecue 200 feet out and around. So
Yeah.
that's the part of that I have trouble picturing.
But you would agree that they would walk it.
Yeah, they'd walk it and
Dog,
enjoy
whatever.
it. Yeah,
So
and
come-
take
So
it
may
home to
having
walk,
ben-
but
benches
going
or
out
something
there and
might-
having events.
yeah,
It comes
Yeah,
down
bench might make
to
more sense.
what do you think is the best use of it?
Yeah.
More of just using the trails and looking over to, and then if they want more of an active park, they go over to the park across the street.
And this is falling under an HOA, if
Right.
I remember correctly. So, I mean, this is also getting into stuff where
yeah, and
they would want it.
I think the two things. One is I would, to some degree, defer to the landscape architect and the developer to do either some combination of manicured type park space and natural open space, whatever they think is going to help them sell houses. I assume that they're going to. It has to be nice for people to want to by there. So, I'm sure whatever they put in would be nice. It's just, I don't know if we want to dictate that completely or just make some recommendations and have them let their landscape architect run with it. But
Well, the thing about that is that if you think a pavilion and benches and picnic tables
are important,
then you need to specify that, because what I'm going to tell my landscape architect is, give me the most tasteful, doesn't cost me very much I can get. And that's not going to include pavilions and benches.
And draws
and
business.
picnic tables. Right, and that's not unreasonable, I'm just saying, that's how it's going to go, right? So if you think those things are important, then you need to con the rest of us into believing you and get that hammered out now. I'm just saying.
I'm totally.
I don't mean you, I mean the generic use.
I can see pavilions and benches being a potential negative to someone, too. I mean, you've got, that's going to be an increased use behind that lot, and that may or may not be a benefit. I mean, you might want to be sitting on your back porch and not having a picnic going on 10 feet from you. If you want, or vice versa. And so that's what I think that's...
15-year-olds smoking cigarettes, playing blackjack.
Exactly. There's, when playgrounds are put in neighborhoods, I mean, they are a benefit to some people, but they're not to others. And I think for the product that they're putting out there, I don't think they want to limit themselves by somebody saying, I love that house, but I'm just not going to buy it because I don't want to hear that bench
I bet
activity.
you're the only person, though. I'll bet you're the only person who's ever even stopped to consider that. Because most people, when they're looking
Not
at
necessarily.
No, there are real estate surveys that tell you that locating next to schools
Location.
and parks
Location is
are a
not-
problem sometimes.
Yes.
I may be wrong.
Well,
Correct me.
Well, you got people walking through the trails
The
anyway. I
actual
mean, you got
statistics.
activity, you got people.
But if they're walking, they're walking. I mean, that's different than parking and using.
Yeah, I don't see too many people outside the neighborhood unless you put it way out by the street, but if you put it somewhere down the middle, doing that. I mean, I live next to Purple Park, I don't see that many people doing that, so. Just going there to just hang out in the structure. I see parties, I see events, but those are the local people taking advantage of it.
But that's a whole lot farther. I mean, the pavilion at Purple Park is a whole lot farther from the lots.
Not from the houses that back right up to it, it's not.
That's
I
absolutely.
mean, you can go anyway. I mean, you could say people from original town in Sagamore and all the rowdies are going to go down there and play in the pavilion. I mean, you could make
Right.
up all kinds of stuff. I think I agree with John that it's sort of up to the developer to. I mean, I think we have an interest in maybe not having a 3-acre irrigated lawn, but beyond that, I think letting them make the call based on who their market is probably the right thing to do.
I agree.
That's not to say that the HOA down the road wouldn't
Wouldn't, yeah, sure.
want to do something else. but
That's great.
For right now, let's
Skate park.
leave it flexible.
We could use a dog park, actually.
I'm looking for a spot.
I think it's about 3
Now.
Okay. What else?
Charge their citizens.
What other concerns?
How about this water? I hate to bring this water, but there were lack of, issues then. Are we going to deal with that in this?
The water stuff?
Yeah.
We're not.
The bridging thing?
The only thing that we can do is make a recommendation. That's a policy thing. It's not a land use thing.
Yeah.
So all we can do is make a recommendation to the board to hold the developers' feet to the fire to make sure that people end up with water in their basements. The developers bonded to, I don't know. That's what I would do if I were on the board. I would make sure that there was a bond in place for the next 15 years to cover whatever mess they make of people's basements as a result of. So, good thing I'm not on the board, I guess.
Were you
but-
referring to water in basements type of issue, the high water table, or were you
the
referring to
water in
the
wells,
well issue?
all that
down the
stuff,
road,
yeah.
all that stuff. I mean, I hate to bring it up, but that was a big discussion.
There's a lot of water
It's just a lot.
engineering involved in the project, so.
There is a lot of water engineering. So
I mean, the less altruistic version of that came up last week, and I guess I felt like I was satisfied, is making sure that the town has its own, liabilities covered for all of that in terms of recommendations to the board for things to keep an eye on and get whatever clarification they need from council. So,
is probably more of my concern than the one with the flooded basement.
That's kind of the bare minimum concern, yeah.
Yeah.
I think you would like to think we'd also want to go beyond if necessary.
I think when that ditch is piped, that's going to change things.
That may
dramatically.
blow everything up. Anyway, it may either really solve
It could,
the
but
well
it's
issue or
it's
really
got
make
to be
it worse.
completely saturating that land right now because
It is.
it's not lined, and the volume coming into the property versus the volume that leaving the property has got to be a significantly different number. And so you pipe it, it's going to not allow that percolation out. And the end point on it right now, I've walked the property, and it just looks like it just kind of goes everywhere. And
To a greater or lesser extent, when that ditch is running in the springtime, anyway, everything south of Williams Street is a bog.
right,
Not entirely a bog, but it's soupy, all the way down to the railroad bed. And I know that because we used to go out there when we were talking about making the 128 acres of Mayhofer part of the, there's parts of that where you be up to your ankles in water. So,
so to me, I think that's going to be a big difference and going to solve a lot of the water table issues. And I don't think we should. I think we need to let the developer going to go through the process. They've done a lot of research on water already, and I think we need to let them continue, and we'll manage this in the final development plan.
Matt, do you have notes of any recommendations with respect to water issues from last week? I couldn't remember if we made any kind of a formal recommendation to the board with respect to it, or if it's just a matter of them reading the notes.
I did not have anything in my notes with regard to specific language that we were going to include with regard to water.
I don't recall us making any recommendation. And I would agree. I think, short of making a recommendation that the board, and maybe that we as a town look at it closely, make sure that we're
Seems like about all
in
we can
agreement
do.
with what their engineers are saying, and getting an independent review if we think it's that important, and it sounds like it is, then it's probably worth the town looking into it as well. I feel better about what I heard last week, that they can't build a basement, they won't. That's the first time I heard that. That was good to hear. But I think we need to do our due diligence.
Is there anything formal we need to do beyond passing along the general comments, or
You could
just to make sure this?
include
front and
something
center.
as a recommendation, maybe a condition. I'm trying to think what that might state.
Isn't
Is there any way to identify the kind of that alluvial?
Well, it is an
plain?
alluvial aquifer.
Yeah, is there the sort of boundaries of that though?
It'll taper depending on the geology, and I think they did show a map that shows some of the probably more prominent aspects of you've got the floodplain itself, and then you've got the alluvial aquifer. But even looking at the well data that goes, or the boring data that goes up close to Coal Creek Drive, you still see that during times of the year that water level definitely comes up, and it's present, and that's well away from the floodplain. So you do have a broadened alluvial aquifer, with all the silty, sandy,
I don't know what
cobbly geology.
I don't know what to make the recommendation
Yeah,
then,
it's-
other than what Bob said. I think
Isn't the annexation agreement touching on this? Or
Well,
good
it
bit?
may, and we've had some discussions with
should.
the applicant. But I can tell you, this was a high discussion item for the board last year when this
Well,
application
and-
went through.
Well, you've
And-
got a lot of liability with existing groundwater well rights, right?
Right,
I
yeah.
mean, that's
And the majority of the
Yeah.
board that was,
But the water wells are typically deep water wells.
Not necessarily.
Is that true?
You're 600 feet?
Yeah,
Well,
that's the number I heard. Something
Not
about
all
600
of the
foot wells or
wells
something.
in original town are deep.
Not all
There are
of
a
them are
bunch of
deep.
shallow ones.
My well's 25 foot deep.
Ours
So-
is about 20 feet.
yeah, so classic, just right in that
but there
alluvial
are some
aquifer.
There are some deep wells, yeah.
But mine's not adjudicated either.
Is
The ones that are adjudicated may be
600.
Is everyone now on domestic town water? So their water supply, their domestic water is town supplied
Right.
water, and the well water is
For irrigation.
irrigation, right?
And
Well, there are some residents who use their well water for other than irrigation.
By choice.
yeah,
By
that
choice.
may be, yeah.
By choice.
By
That may be
choice.
true. That may be true. And there are wells that have a permit,
For drinking water.
and there are wells in town that
Do not.
cannot document a permit.
I mean, the water rights in Colorado are pretty well given thing, they're very specific.
Are they specific to only those that are
Well, it depends what
registered?
they're,
Is that what you're
yes,
saying?
to to those who have a permit.
Very specific.
Only permitted wells, okay.
But if you have a drawdown, it'll affect, particularly the shallow wells, it'll affect all of them, whether they're permitted
yeah.
or not, obviously.
For
Yeah, permitted or
Phyllis,
not.
have you had a well? Has your well run dry in a dry year?
Yes,
Okay.
and it's gotten very low in other years.
So, but
And that'll be the natural
we can,
variation.
I'm just asking a question.
we can do this all night long, but really all we should do is put a note to the board that, hey, we noticed there's a water issue.
Make sure you
and
pay attention to
We
things
should,
we're already
you
paying
should
attention
pay really close attention to that and then move on, because
Yep.
we don't, even if we came up with the solution to that issue, it's not in our purview to put it anywhere that matters.
Right.
No, I was just
Agreed.
bringing it up because it's so well discussed.
I'm with you. I'm not picking on you at all, I'm just saying.
Here, Mike.
On we go.
Okay,
What
so,
else?
so I'd like to discuss with other members of the commission here. I went to the public hearings that were in front of the board, and I saw this room filled up night after night after night, as we had to keep continuing it, running late into the night and late into the night, so that people could speak, the people who live in Original Town, the people who live in Sagamore, who will actually live with this. And there were many comments about how the footprints don't really match up. We, over and over, would be given one example in Original Town to say, see, Original Town has large footprints, when in fact it would be 1 out of 100. See, Original Town has high roof lines, when in fact it would be 1 out of 100. There were many, many inputs. There were inputs and desires to see something that captures better the idea that in an economy and in an energy world that we're going to be living in, maybe houses shouldn't be so big. Maybe they should be better set up for solar. Da 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 da. So, okay, many, many hours of this kind of input, many letters to the trustees. Since those hearings, there have been no meetings to bring us together to talk to Remington. They never said, golly, we heard all this. In fact, we got voted down, and we really want to try to see these ends meet. And so I went to their website. In the last presentation last week, they kept calling these patio homes. I don't know why they call them patio homes, because these are, within most of their developments, these are fully in the single-family to estate home sizes. Patio homes in Whisper Creek start at 1,650 square feet. Dancing Willows, they have, quote, a luxury patio home starting in the low 300s that even have the rear load garages that people had talked about in the hearings, and that would even conform to, wow, if we actually sort of aligned with the contiguous part of Original Town, with the lot orientations, with fronting on Coal Creek, with fronting on what would be an extension of William, with fronting on an extension of Charles, you have it right there. But did they bring any of these forward? No. They keep bringing forward the large footprint, the massive house. Saddlebrook, patio homes starting at 1495 square feet. Where are these? These are all patio homes going up to 2,400 square feet, even going bigger, almost 3,000 square feet. Those are patio homes.
I guess my impression of the patio home term generally refers to a kind of a zero maintenance landscaping.
Well, there are different ways to interpret patio home.
But I understand
I've
what you're
seen many instances where patio home refers to that, quote, downsizing a bit, low maintenance. So again, in light of the many hours that people spent in this room trying to convey what seems to work or not work, and then to find all these in existence in their portfolio, and none of these were really brought forward, I'm really disappointed, if not a little astounded, as if all that never happened, and that we're just starting from ground nothing, and we never saw anything before, and gee, here's something to bring out.
You bring up continuing William Street, and the one thing that I really would struggle with, though, I guess, in terms of substantially changing the layout of this property, is if you're going to maintain the open space requirement that we have, and you run William Street through, you're knocking a very large chunk of developable space off of what little is left on this. So it's
Well, I guess what my take is, and again, I live in this vicinity, my take would be, I think given the open space, whatever you want to call it, track toward the south side, which is the most difficult to develop, so I think that's a really good thing to get that out of the picture, because the water table is highest there and a lot of challenges. Personally, I think I'd go back to something that still mostly aligns those lots, and maybe you don't have that big open space there, but you actually have something that fits with the two neighboring neighborhoods. I mean, I like...
you can't align the lots along 6th because there's been adamant refusal to continue William Street.
Well, again,
Are you taking
it
that as a
is
given?
William in aspect, not
Understood.
necessarily William in,
But I guess keep in mind that 6th Avenue homes are still going to front 6th Avenue exclusively because of that. There is no, unless I'm missing something else you have in mind.
Well, I'd be turning the grid around myself. But again, that gets into...
Well, but the details matter here. I mean, I don't
Well,
just don't have a vision of what you're talking about.
And I'm giving a detail that I think, again, given the many hours that people have spent with this, I'm just still kind of surprised that this is, that again, it all fits together. I think you'd almost have to have that because these houses are going to be so large compared to everything else. You almost have to have something like that. Whereas some of these other homes, with the right orientation, maybe you don't have as much of a need to have 3 acres open right in the middle because you wouldn't feel as claustrophobic, frankly. So that is my comment, is I'm not clear where Remington is coming from when there were many, many hours of people making all sorts of statements, and there was a concession on the number of homes, but not really on finding the homes that fit in between these neighborhoods and in this part of town. And being something substantially a different product, I think these look a lot like Rock Creek homes. It's just you're going to have another HOA, Rock Creek type of development right down here. And I think you talk about diversification of housing in Superior. Superior probably has the highest percentage of HOA housing of all the neighboring communities. So is that actually diversifying? Is that giving someone more of a choice coming to this community, or lesser of a choice? When we've only got 2 neighborhoods that are not HOA controlled. That's it. That's not many.
And one is just because it failed.
Yeah. So anyway, that's something I'm very concerned about. how we still seem to be miles apart in certain ways.
And I'm going to echo and probably tack on to that a little bit. I did pass out just some data from Original Town, from the a property record search from the Boulder County's assessors data. I just wanted to see the numbers for myself. So a lot of the last meeting and previous meetings, and I had a discussion with our town manager too. It just feels like when developers come forward, it's a sales pitch, and it really is. It's everything pro, and it turns into our responsibility to figure out what is it really that or not. And staff, I also feel, kind of focuses on the pros and generally recommends what's brought forward from developers. And so, researching the comp plan, trying to make decisions about whether or not this development fits, looking at the numbers for what is in Original Town compared to what they've told us. One of the comparisons that was made was to the new train depot. That was one of the homes that was compared in the last meeting. We looked it up, pulled out the historical book, reviewed the tape again, and one of the homes they showed as a home was actually a new train depot that was built in town, fairly large for Original Town, so it was a train depot. Looked at it again, so just to make sure we were right about that. They're trying to sell their product, and so they're talking about the one, mind you, I believe, wrought iron fence, maybe two, in Original Town, most original houses, chain link fences, some broken down wooden fences, and some white picket fences, as I would say is the majority of the type of fences that you see in Original Town. The square footages of our homes that are there currently, which is what I just passed out to everybody, with a summary on the back that just, they weren't far off. They just accentuate the positive and the things that are appropriate to match up with the
Can
product.
we get a copy of that?
Yeah, I made 10, and I thought there was enough.
You can have mine. I get the point.
Also, I would just remind the commission that in making your decisions today, you need to consider only that evidence that was presented to you during the public hearing. So we need to, as far as comments that have been made at previous hearings, other documentation being passed out today, that type of thing, we need to limit your decisions to the testimony that was presented at the public hearing.
So it's obvious by looking at Original Town that we've got smaller homes that some include cellars, some include some basements, a few of them include two-story homes. The height of our homes are, even Sagamore, I think, Rochelle, we brought up in the last meeting, there were 28 feet at a two-story home.
That's a two-story.
The one-story homes that are being presented are in the high 20s with the pitched roofs and everything. They are basically look like large estate two-story homes. And I stand where I did last week that this development doesn't meet the comprehensive plan. As far as how it just even integrates into this area of town, Sagamore and Original Town, it creates a yet completely different type of homeowner. Family development on one side, family developments on the other, empty nester, patio homes in the middle. I think it's just going to create a conflict. I just can't see it enhancing this neighborhood really in any way. It just every way I look at it, it doesn't seem like the right type of product for this area, for this part of town. And I'd really like to see family-based homes that are going to attract families into this area, not empty nesters that are leaving. I have said before, I am love to see this developed. I love the area that they've proposed to develop. I think it's awesome that we're considering that we're able to purchase the open space on the south side. I've never liked this product. I also understand there's other product that they have that may be of interest that's a little bit smaller. And I just would really like to see something different than patio homes, large patio homes, plopped right next door to a neighborhood that's a contiguous neighborhood that's much, much smaller in scale in all ways.
I think, though, to assume that only empty nesters are going to live there is That's a pretty broad assumption. I mean, there's nothing, they're not writing in any prohibitions for families living there, for single parents with children living there. I mean, you're going to have a mix, and every neighborhood does. So I guess I don't completely buy that. It's only going to be empty nesters, and it's going to be an exclusive community.
It's not like it's going to be a senior home development. I mean, we're not looking at that like South Florida. This is just a product.
But it's the draw, it's the product, it's the intent, it's where they're going, and what they're trying to attract. And that is what it is. I mean, they didn't come in here selling as families and a park in the middle with kids playing and running around. I mean, I haven't heard a peep of that, and not a peep from our developers about any possibility or interest in family. Not that they won't. I understand. Families are going to come in there.
There's a lot of product in this town that has that, and I think that's their point. Is that this town doesn't have the type of product that they're.
I don't disagree. That doesn't mean you plop it down. That doesn't mean that it belongs where it's being put. That's in my that's my opinion. I mean, I agree with you. That's true.
I don't know. I just, it's not like it's a gated community. It should integrate somehow, and you're going to come up with a more modern elevation type stuff than the old original townhouses just are. Hopefully,
don't think or suggest that we would even want to try to match the original town.
Yeah,
there's a lot of cool
do
product out there. I mean, drive around this area, look around Stapleton, look around Longmont, look at some of it. I mean, there's some cool developments around here with smaller homes that just aren't quite the footprint of this product. And I mean, they're out there. So I ever want anybody to think any thought that we should try to match original town housing in this development.
Is it square footage that you're thinking of, or massing?
Massing of the home. I mean, it's square footage of garage included, because it just looks like a big, massive. I mean, it just looks like a big home. Driving through their developments, I mean, I've driven through them. And it feels tight. It feels. I mean, it just. I mean, so it's a lot of home. It's a lot of product.
Okay. What else?
So, I think that I have to agree with the massing. Ever since Sagamore was built, I thought, wow, I never ever want to see something like that happen again. Not that, I mean...
I don't take offense. It is pretty
not
ugly.
big houses
It
inside.
is what it is, I know, but the problem is they take up all the space there is on the lot,
Understood.
right?
This would be double that footprint. It's roughly double
So
the
these
footprint of
houses-
Sagamore.
And what's the average lot size in Sagamore?
61. Or
I don't know.
about 6. Yeah.
Oh, I know it.
50 by 50,
Yeah.
something like that.
That's
They're
tiny.
very small lots, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
not- so
Right,
so
we know that, no.
the issue becomes
I'm just trying to figure out if that's a good fair comparison.
it's not a fair comparison, perhaps, house type to house type, but it is a fair comparison, original town to something else. Right. So the Sagamore subdivision doesn't fit in original town at all either. The problem that we have here is not only are these houses going to have tiny little spaces in between them, but the massing of them is going to dwarf whatever is nearby, and it's going to stick out literally like a sore thumb from what's there. And of course, a new development with not mature trees, blah blah blah, is going to stick out that way. But I just think I think that the house size is too big. I think that the distance between them will end up being too big. If you look at the these guys said they drove and did a whole bunch of whatever, and so Bob's bringing the numbers on. They showed us pictures. Here's numbers on those houses that we looked at, right? So if you look, there's about half of the houses in original town approximate 3,000 square feet without their garages. About half. It's actually 22 of 61 houses. something like that, right? So, and they're interspersed, not all lined up on 3 streets, right? They're all interspersed in between with, and so the sense of space that you get as a result of that is much different than when you have 55 3,000 plus square foot homes all right next to each other and connected to the original town via the backyards and trails. So I agree that I don't think that this project fits the comp plan either. I think that Rochelle's point that another HOA-controlled community isn't necessarily adding a difference to the housing stock. If you want to talk about adding different to the housing stock that's meaningful, talk to me about houses that people who are trying to downsize can get into and actually be downsized into, or talk to me about homes that a starting family can buy and not have to get whacked with HOA fees. Talk to me about assisted living, or talk to me about duplexes. If you want to talk about patio homes that really matter, that's my concept of a patio home has always been sort of a multiplexed unit of 2 to 4 in a cluster kind of thing with a patio in between them. So but anyway, that's not my argument is not to try to control what these guys are offering as a product. My desire is to discuss what we think is an acceptable product for the space and the use in the town. And I don't think that, personally, I don't think these guys get it. And Mr. Hopkins, I understand you've been round and round, and I think we're there on the streets. We've annexed the property, so we agree with you that it wants to be developed. We know that Remington has product that'll fit better in terms of massing in this neighborhood. So I just I don't think we're done yet, and I don't think we're that far away from it either. And maybe as a compromise, I'd be willing to say let's leave the lot coverage at 40%. Let's limit the number of front loadable garages to a third, and let's let them deal with the massing on that regard. The problem though is the more so if you limit the lot size, the lot coverage then to the 40% that's already in the code, then you make a really long house. Long houses with hipped roofs necessarily have taller roofs, so I'm not sure that that's necessarily solving the problem.
I saw some of the pictures, and they didn't look bad, and they had a lot of appeal toward if you're walking, you felt like there were front porches, there was better proximity.
And I think all of that is useful.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I think all of that is useful.
So when I looked at those and the pitching and everything, but again, because the mass was so much less, it's like, yeah, it may peak out about where these do, but without the massing, it looked really different.
It's got different demographics in different parts of the Metroplex. And land in Boulder County is pretty expensive stuff. That's probably what's driving this.
When I drive through the south part of Rock Creek, it feels cramped to me compared to the north side. And that's just the reality of land has gotten more expensive.
Right.
Sagamore, in defense of Sagamore, I am here today because of Sagamore. I was the 7th person to buy a house there, to move in there. And were it not for that subdivision, I probably wouldn't be here today. So, it fit a need for me. It's been a very successful
It's because that was considered affordable housing and sold as such.
Right, and it was a
This isn't.
No, but it is fitting a need that's that's not being met right now. And I guess I don't have the massing concerns. I think the design of their houses is such that it's vastly different than Sagamore, and there seems to be this sense of we're so afraid of doing another Sagamore. I hear that every single meeting. I mean, I've been here for about a year now, and I don't think a meeting has happened where we haven't had some kind of Sagamore saga, and
Because Sagamore was aesthetically, Sagamore is a pretty big mistake, seconded
I
only
don't
by the
think-
Ridge.
And I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that.
Okay.
I think it fit a need, and
It doesn't have
It's-
anything to do with whether it fit a need. Aesthetically, it's a pretty horrible mistake.
well, I think if it was that horrible, nobody lived there.
Except that that's where you could buy a house in Boulder County. So, my last comment, is that we're talking about putting these things between two junkyards. We're talking about putting essentially high-end homes between two.
Actually, the builder is.
The
builder is where, yeah.
We're talking about, so in a tough economy where, you're utterly more careful about where you spend your money, how motivated are you to purchase a high-end home sandwiched between two salvage yards? Not for us to worry about, but certainly something to consider. Since, here is right, whether their homes are saleable or not is not our problem, but we are now locking this piece of property up into this development. So, what's the likelihood it's going to actually happen? I don't know. Just a thought.
I think if it were that much of an issue, it'd be just as much of an issue for people buying $300,000 homes. So I guess in terms of the type of product coming in here, which seems to be the main argument, it's a zero-sum game issue.
Cool. Let's vote.
Okay. Do anyone else have other comments? Okay. We want to straw poll these things for a vote that we may or may not include in a motion.
Additional conditions?
Yeah.
I think we kind of did. But
Well, I don't know. I mean, like we can start with a lot coverage issue, and
It needs to be addressed.
so staff is throwing a recommendation out of 45%, and the applicant has requested 55%. The recently reviewed zoning changes that we went through in the Chapter 16, well, actually, that Mr. Kuffner brought forth was to increase the lot size coverage from 35% to 40%. So, that's kind of where we stand right now. I mean, if massing is an issue.
massing is not going to be helped by changing that number.
It doesn't solve
The
the
5
issue.
foot, the
It
5
makes
foot
sense.
side setbacks.
Right, the setbacks are the
is
same.
Exactly where
exactly
all
the
of that
same.
is.
Well,
Just to make sure everybody's thinking that way.
Well,
You got a deeper
And-
house,
and
you got a
the
deeper
maximum-
house and a deeper lot.
the maximum lot height, right.
You're not going to notice.
So, I'm
45%
40
seems
Is there a
reasonable to me.
consensus that 45% seems like a reasonable number?
I'm good with 45.
And that number was calculated based off of
So how many
information that
people
the
think
developer gave
45%
us.
is a reasonable amount? Let's move this along. Okay, so that's solved.
Okay. Lighting levels?
Right. Our recommendation was
Staff recommendation
mid-block
versus the
traffic
developer's
and pedestrian.
I think
intent.
it's all a matter of just getting the right kinds of lighting.
Yeah, my concern is that, and correct me if I'm mistaken, but what I saw in the packet, and I tried to find it again and I couldn't, it's probably right in front of me, but was a four-sided thing with that the light can go out four sides because they're mimicking what's in the original town. But we spent countless hours a year ago, 2 years ago, maybe it's 5 now, I don't remember, but talking about we don't do streetlights like that anymore because it creates too much side light and glare. And so I don't see the value in having those light fixtures, period, and adding more of them doesn't make any sense, and so I agree with the developer that that's just noise. It's light noise at that point. If we're going to do some sort of mid-block lighting that's going to shine in some kid's bedroom window, then it should be just down lighting with no capability of squirting out the sides. And I think that was if somebody had asked me what to use in the original town, I would have said the same. And then I think that for the if there's to be any lighting at all in the back 40 or 3, as it were, I think that needs to be low and also down lighting, enough to light up, not higher than 6 feet above the ground, so that if you hear commotion out there, you can look out and see that there's something or nothing, perhaps, but not enough so that you're looking into the white orb of streetish light.
No, I would think something similar to Purple Park, where it's
Yeah.
3.5 feet tall or whatever those are. Three
Sorry,
to 4 foot.
I remember hitting
Talking about
parking and
those
street
bollards?
lighting standards. It sounded like we have standards for path lighting that would address that already?
We have 4 metrics for that.
Okay. Now, as far as the PD goes, is there a need to, presumably we have to call out exceptions to what we already have in the
I
code
would
for
make that a
lighting?
recommendation.
But does it need to be a recommendation that we follow our code, or is there,
Well,
are there requested variances from the
You're
code as far
adding.
as lighting? That's what I'm asking, I guess.
not in terms of fixtures or anything like that, it's more the floor metrics, how much, light is on the ground around the light. So what your recommendation would be is that basically that pedestrian lights, if you want them, are wanted, and then that they are of the downcast variety and with minimal side spillage. They'll have to come up with a fixture that meets that if this, at the FTP stage.
Are there any foot candle recommendations that Superior's trying to adopt?
We have-
They're in the code.
Yeah.
We have
Okay.
foot candle recommended.
But I guess again, the question is, do we have that for path lighting? I'm
Yeah.
not sure I follow why you're recommending we specify anything. It seems like if we just say,
Well, we can't-
for example,
we don't
path
spec-
lighting and street lighting per,
Won't specify fixture, we just specify the foot candle on the ground. And.
and then we have a glare constraint of some, I remember getting into this.
The
We
other
do
part
have
is
other.
downcast. In other words, that
Downlighting.
Right.
downlighting then gets away from the side glare.
But that's in the
in the
lighting code, isn't it?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have to specify light fixtures or anything. We just have to say, add a mid-block light and add path lighting, and,
Yeah.
right.
We'll argue that.
We can hash that other stuff out
The
later.
code covers the details.
So,
So do we want to add mid-block lighting and
Yes.
path lighting?
yes, do we
How
want to
many
add,
people
which
wanna
is,
add
which is,
mid-block and
which is
path?
the staff recommendation, right?
Yes. Right.
Okay, how many want that? 1, 2, 3, 4, and how many
Don't
want
want that.
whatever the developer had put in there, in the plan? 4. 4 and 4.
Wait.
Oh, great.
There's 9 people.
I just
There's
have no
9.
opinion.
Does somebody not?
I have no opinion on it.
You have to.
Now you
have to.
pressure's on.
We've been
Pick
through
one.
this before.
It's just a straw poll at this point.
Two non-voters.
You have to, because we can
non-vote
stay
is a
here all
yes.
night.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, non-vote is a yes.
We've
Okay,
been through
great.
this, right, James?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So,
Wait, yes to what? Hang on.
Yes, what?
We-
oh, yeah, this isn't a yes or no question.
Do you want to re-poll that?
Well, are we talking about midway on
Well, I
Eighth?
tried to do both.
Yeah.
Are we talking here
Here,
and
here,
here? Okay, not like
And then-
here too then? On Charles?
No, it says
No,
specifically
mid-block.
6th and 8th.
6th.
Mid-block, 6th
The
and
long
8th.
blocks.
Okay.
And then the trail.
And then on the
Something on the
path.
trail.
Something in what the path configuration inside the open space.
And if you have differing opinions on the two, there's 2 different line items.
We can come back to this.
Okay, why don't we get back to this? I've got to meditate
The
on it.
hard connection and the street crossing, do you think that's a good idea? If so, raise your hand.
The mid-block street, did you say?
The
I
path
think I was
connection
just,
is
it was merely just the, in my case, it was some,
the contiguous path.
You're talking about recommendation 7?
But that,
no,
that's
They
got
Additional
have
crossing.
minimal lighting.
I think it's
Yeah,
conceptual
I-
anyway.
trails.
I guess so,
That's
yes.
the problem.
Yeah.
This area.
Yes.
This dark.
Just to be specific about it.
yes.
is that really what they wanted to do with the town center block, the town center 9 parcel? Is put in a connection to that parcel we're talking about in this development?
It's on the staff recommendation. Item 7, additional pedestrian crossing connection to the
By
Central
they, do you mean?
Park Trail to the Town 9 Park Trail.
Crossing, yeah, I don't know. ProStack or what's?
I think the
No, it
trail
didn't.
connectivity comment made sense to me, is if you're going to run a trail through there, to have it either connects to the trail across the street, or it just dead ends
But it
there.
really was seen as a connection across the street.
I don't know whether ProStack's reviewed it to that extent, but
I'm not on
there's a
ProStack
park right
side.
across the
ProStack
street.
I'm not either.
The park,
And I'm
so
on
does-
ProStack, and we look at trails, and trail connectivity's, a good
I
thing.
mean, there's basically
We
a
don't look at
perimeter
trails,
trail
so.
around the park, isn't there,
Right.
already?
Yeah, there is.
So, I mean, you're talking about a little tee-off on the opposite side.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's just make it so that cars aren't parked there and people can go across without having to go to the corner and come back or whatever. Although, I'm not,
My suggestion actually was some type of way of tying those two things together. Not a bridge. Some
Catapult.
swing line.
very,
a luge run. Some type of way to visually connect the two sides of the street together. So if you were going to have maybe have a gate or something that has your little wrought iron fence or whatever along it or something there, you would mimic that on the other side of the street, on the Town 9 side. That was my suggestion.
so like the St. Louis Arch.
Whether that's at 6th or at midpoint or whatever, it doesn't matter to me. I'm just trying to figure out if that's a good idea.
Yeah, and the park doesn't know what they.
And the park has no right, and so I'm trying to tie these two things.
I guess
together.
I'm pretty happy with the wording they had here, though, is that there's an additional pedestrian crossing connecting Central Park Trail
Right, we're talking about two different things.
to Town 9. And yeah, you're looking for more of a architectural, I guess,
Yeah,
aspect.
This isn't that time though. Now it's not then.
Okay, fine.
Now is only is there going to be one?
Okay, so the question is then 7, additional pedestrian crossing connecting. Do we think that's important or not?
I do.
Yeah.
Raise your hand. 1,
Do
2,
you think it's important?
3, 4, 5. They do. We do.
To have that trail.
Yes. Okay.
5 people think it's important.
Got it. Park landscaping, native versus manicured, or
Something else.
some hybrid of.
How many people want native landscaping with no added amenities in the 3-acre park behind the houses?
1, 2, 3, 4. 4. And
How many
how many
people-
would want to let the developer decide what that park looks like?
Yeah, it's gonna be different.
That's the same, that's the
That could be the same thing.
I mean, it could be the same.
It could be the same.
Could be the same.
It could be.
You
You're
could
right.
just ignore.
I think we're basically
Okay.
choosing not to send a recommendation about that.
Six.
Yes,
We're not.
yes.
Does
Yes.
developer want to send a specific recommendation? Do we
I mean,
not?
No man.
the default position is manicured lawns, right?
No,
that's
not at all.
Not necessarily.
Staff's recommendation.
I think again, it's if you go to line 6 on their recommendations.
Oh, yes.
we either
Landscaped
agree
irrigated
with
turf.
that or we don't. And I
Right.
think it sounds like the majority of us do not. So if we want to get specific on the straw poll, those in favor of including item 6 on the recommendations, raise your
Right.
hand.
Item 6 states, Central Park Track C to be landscaped with irrigated turf, trees and shrubs, and other amenities as such, benches, grills, and a pavilion.
I want the trees, not the shrubs, and no irrigated turf, and I want half a bench and
The question is, okay, so
Walk up.
based on
Who's in
that,
favor of
based on
staff
that,
recommendation?
yeah, who's in favor of the staff recommendation? No one. Okay. So,
So do we have another
Sorry,
recommendation, or do we just not have any
I
recommendation?
think we have
If you have one proposed.
I have a proposal for a recommendation,
Okay.
which is
let's listen to Bob's proposed recommendation.
my proposed recommendation. Would be that in general, we're not in favor of a fully irrigated park in the central area, and, would like to see some, something other than a fully irrigated park in the middle, and let the developer take it from there. That's my recommendation. Let them figure out what that needs to look like,
Okay.
without getting that specific.
do you,
Yeah,
does that sound
and then
good?
the board may get more specific.
If you like that, raise your hand.
So for clarification, something more than just native grass.
No, we're just saying that we're not in favor of a fully
Meaning
irrigated
fully-
park.
fully
That's
irrigated.
all we're saying. And yeah, that could turn into a 1/10 of an acre of natural stuff and 3 9/10 acres of
But we'll have an opportunity to
irrigated,
comment
but
on
I
this
mean,
at
yeah,
FDP.
I mean, I think
we're,
the spirit of it
we're
is-
fine to see what they come up with. Okay.
With all that water down there, maybe the cattails will do good. telling them.
Okay,
Do we need anything, though? Because, I mean, that's what the developer's proposing, so do we need any recommendation at all? Because that's what they are proposing is native grasses.
We're saying we don't need to come up with one ourselves at this point.
Do we need to say that, though?
Oh, if that's so, because they're proposing native grasses.
Right.
Staff is okay.
Yeah, we're just saying we don't agree with what staff's saying, but
Okay.
do we need to make that recommendation? We just drop it.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable point because if I understand correctly,
Yeah.
deviations from what was proposed.
I'll retract my proposed.
Thanks for playing.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. Got a lot of
It's
votes.
retracted?
Got a lot of votes.
I didn't vote for it because I knew it wasn't going to waste my breath or my arm strength.
I would still stand by it, what we agreed to, because I think that at FDP, if we don't like what just straight native grasses, we can
But
have
that's
some say. We'll also have pro staff's recommendations at that point we could review and so on. So,
But if it's a deviation from what was proposed, again, isn't that just as much of a, I guess, a flag in terms of issues as if we reiterate
We're not- but we're not-
that
we're
they
not-
should do what
we're
they
not-
propose to do?
they're not detailing what's there at this point.
No.
There's a proposed landscape plan that's part of
Yeah.
this package.
There is. Yeah, it's.
I mean, it's like a sketch plan.
Right, either we accept their landscape plan or fight about it.
It's still part of that they're still FDP.
Right, they still do have to come through the FDP, which is where a final landscape plan would be approved or disapproved and
Right.
requirements set. So because they propose it here doesn't mean it sticks here.
So it's,
But you can expect that that's pretty much what it's going to look like.
the only other way I could see going on this, to give them some direction, is to take a straw poll of who wants a combination of some sort.
I want stripes, I want 5 feet of irrigated, then 5 feet of,
I mean, if we want to try to give them some direction for
I just
what they try to do.
would encourage them to do what they proposed.
Fred, what do you think? about this recommendation?
I think you need to basically identify if they need to beef up the landscape plan for that central park with other amenities. You can say that in general terms. There's been a lot of suggestions. I mean, no one's asking for something intense. I think it's pretty well a consensus that irrigated park is probably not necessary, but maybe some trees. Our thought was, of course, something it's a little bit more inviting.
Something more
every
than
picture they show
something more
of
than a
their
bunch of
natural
native grass.
trails, every picture they show of their natural trails has some landscaping amenities along with it, whether it's natural grass off to the side or not. They're very nice to walk through. This is not very, this is a 3-acre field.
it's pretty much going to be a dirt lot.
And,
The way it is right
and a
now.
trail. So that was our thought, is that some other amenities, they don't have, we're not designing the deal here. We're suggesting some other amenities that would make this a more inviting place to walk through as part of this development, which is actually a very nice development.
Okay.
I have a question for Fred. We're talking about irrigated sod versus native grass. Doesn't native grass still have to be irrigated?
It's irrigated in the beginning to get it started, but it is not served by an irrigation system necessarily.
So it could die out when we have a hot summer.
It goes dormant.
It could.
Goes dormant.
Theoretically, native grass, I assume, can go dormant. If we have a severe drought, everybody's stuff is bad anyway, so that takes this one out also.
That changes my mind then. I would like to see native grass, but it irrigated, so if that helps. I just hate to see it.
On the
Go
diagram,
completely
they bleed out the irrigation into this space along the edges of the back lots, the backs of the lots that back to this thing. It bleeds out in there, the irrigation, but that's probably from overspray or however they set up their system. Everything though, from there all the way through the rest of the park is a native grass. But other than that, there's not a tree in it.
What about some comment about a designed landscape as opposed to?
Or a combination of,
Right.
combination of
I
both.
think, though, that goes back to their interest is
design.
in making it look nice
Right.
so they can sell homes. I mean, if it's a dirt lot, it's not going to sell homes. And, I mean, the native grasses to the south of this property are it's very attractive to look over that area. And it's a nice natural setting. I think that's what they eventually hope to get.
I think that would be kind of nice, would be to draw that, which is south, into that, which
Yeah.
is north.
I think a combination where you're kind of flowing it in and then doing some extra landscaping and some benches and
But the nice thing
maybe
is
some
that all the pictures we
grass
saw
in the
show
middle.
that these
How
guys
about-
have
how
an
about
idea how to do that. So let's
Circle.
How about,
grass
how
in the
about
middle.
the recommendation is that the developer provide some
They will.
designed landscape that
It's cohesive
is
with the area.
cohesive with the natural open space
Right.
in and around the development.
I like that.
How's that?
Close enough. I think they know what we'll be looking for. Or at
Does that
least-
make
at
sense?
least have some idea.
If not, they never will.
Yeah.
The water table and so on. You
How
have
many
you had-
people want to make a recommendation that we make the town board aware of the fact that they should pay attention to both some way to mitigate water in the basements of people, so close attention to good foundation draining, and then also to paying attention to what happens with the recharging of the wells that are adjacent to this property. And, Colorado water law is like that anyway. It says that you don't have, even if you have water
Wait,
rights
finish
on
your
your
poll.
property, you can't.
finish your poll.
That was it. Sure. How many people want to make sure the water rights and water flooding is
What he
taken
said.
care of?
I think the only
Great.
thing you're leaving out maybe is the idea of liability. Make sure the town is.
That was my whole point,
That's
is
the
to make
whole
sure
point.
that the
Okay.
This
town's
is really
liability.
specifically related
Well,
to the town.
there's
any
two
liability of the
things.
town.
The town's liabilities are covered, and that if people are injured, they're made whole by somebody not the town. Right? And not me.
How do you?
Specifically not me. I'd like to be named as the not party.
Not James McKillis. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Staff?
Is that clear? You guys?
Okay.
Taking it under
Is that
advisement.
it? Was that it?
4 and 5. I think.
Oh, 4 and 5. I'm
If we
sorry.
want to cover all of their lists.
Item 4, improvements to Coal Creek Drive should match the existing Coal Creek Drive streetscape that is east of 5th. All in favor? Okay.
A quick question on that. Will that match the lighting scape? And I mean, same, you just want to continue what we've got on down?
That's the point.
Yep. And 5, the trail on the southern open space tract have to be constructed by the applicants.
According to the town's design?
uh,
Okay, then we should add according to the town's design.
According to the town's design. Okay. All in favor? You don't like that?
No, I'm okay with it.
I'm not.
Just in vote.
Streetscape and the trail.
So you have to come back to.
Minor technical and red line.
So one skipped?
Wait, before we
Rochelle
jumping
opted
away,
out.
Oh,
You opted out on the
Lighting.
lights, so now you have
So we have to.
why don't we just redo it?
wait, before we make Rochelle talk about that,
Yeah.
what are we doing about side yard and rear yard setbacks, especially as they pertain to the corners of Coal Creek and 6th, Coal Creek and 8th?
The recommendation of the elevations, or are you talking about the
Setbacks.
setbacks?
So you're at. So you
So
want to
strictly
set
setback.
further off of Coal Creek.
I just want to make sure
I want
that
a minimum.
if we're running the side of a 100-foot house along Coal Creek, I want it not to be right up on the curb. Not that it's going to be 100 feet.
I think they
but-
talk about a 20-foot setback.
Yeah, 20-foot minimum.
They do.
Yeah.
On page 5.
Right.
That's-
I'm looking at page 5, and I see a back of walk to front road garage is 20 feet.
Well, they have here item 8 in the annexation impact report, so a buffer area linear, that a 20-foot buffer area is provided along Coal Creek Drive to provide landscape buffer between proposed
Oh,
homes
okay.
and Coal Creek Drive.
Sorry, I guess I didn't read that
Yeah.
close enough or at all. Forgive me. And then, so what about 5 yards on the side yards between
5 feet?
5 feet, on the side, so 10 feet between houses, in between structures? I mean, yeah, right. You okay with that?
Consistent with our,
That's our current land use.
Just
With
checking.
our land use.
I know it is.
Then we have the
Just
rear
checking.
yard that they actually are trimming. Yeah.
What's that?
They are trimming the rear yard. Proposed
Yes.
10 feet from our standard of 20.
Yeah, but I don't, except on the ends, I don't have too much trouble with that. In the back. And if by trimming the rear yard, we can get better stagger on the front, I'd say that's a good thing,
Agreed.
right?
You talk about the minimum 2 foot setback?
Yeah,
stagger?
I would like to see that increased, actually, but, no, I'm talking about if we, right now, the back of walk to the front porch is only 13 feet in the front, minimum. And so, I guess,
Yeah,
but
that's-
that's not really gonna help, it's just gonna let him make a longer house.
Right, so.
Their argument is, the closer you are to the sidewalk, the better off you are, because you can say, hey, neighbor, instead of, hey, neighbor. Right. You know, and so, which is not an unreasonable argument, but I don't know that the, I don't have as much trouble with the rear
I
yard.
guess I think I would
No,
rather,
you already
I'd
did
rather
the
see the
house.
house stagger
It doesn't make any
number
difference.
increase a bit.
Yeah, I'd like to see more than 2 feet on the house stagger.
I mean, probably at least double that.
And how about the length of the driveways? What are we dealing, and I haven't been able to really tell. So in Sagamore, you can't walk down the sidewalks in most of those. Somebody
Yeah.
buys an SUV that's a little long and
You
it's...
park a
it's
car and you're
sidewalk.
basically going to be walking into the street.
Yeah, it's...
I think they made it,
I wasn't able to figure out whether or
there
not
was
that's-
a, there
It
was a
says back of
discussion.
walk to front load garage, 20 feet.
20 feet.
20
Back
feet to the
of
garage,
walk.
so you ought to be able to park
to a
anything
side
but a
load
motorhome.
garage. Okay. And a
Well,
front
actually,
load
a
garage-
Suburban's
back walk to front load garage is 20
So-
feet.
So back a sidewalk to
No,
front.
I know,
garage.
I'm just saying, it's not anything but a motorhome, it's
Yeah.
surprisingly
Well,
short.
well,
Back of walk to side load garage, 13
13
feet.
feet. I mean, there.
But that's because you're turning, you have to
That's
turn.
a side
There's no
load
way
garage.
you could
There's turn.
hang out. Well, you could hang out, but you have to turn to get.
Then
to
there's
the
the
side.
depth of the
Garage
garage.
could be loaded
Oh,
from
that's
the
a side
street.
load. Okay, that's
Yeah.
okay. That's
So you've got a
okay,
90
all
to
right.
deal with.
Okay.
Right.
So that's not
So
bad.
parking on the driveway, you're going to have.
Well,
You've got the depth of 2 garage stalls.
I believe a
plus
side
15
load
feet.
garage is in conjunction with a,
You have
it's
some
the
side load.
it's the third bay.
Yeah, you have.
I'm not sure I've seen where they've got a double car garage, that's all it is, but it's side loaded. Maybe they have a configuration like that. But what they show in here is a 3-car garage. The side load is the one that is near the street.
What?
The
And then the
the
others
other
go
2 are, the garage door is a minimum of 20 feet back from the back
So
wall.
it's got a split drive.
They got a split drive.
Right.
Are you covered under the side load garage requirement with the side yard setback when it comes to, well, obviously with Coal Creek,
Yeah, I was
on
wondering
Coal Creek,
about that.
right?
Coal Creek.
You already have 20 feet, right? You
Yeah,
have to
right.
do. So if you're
Well,
going to
Coal
do a
Creek,
side,
there's no driveways going on.
Oh,
Yeah,
there's
it's
Coal
not.
Creek, right?
No, it's all,
They have a wraparound porch.
But is there any other lots where someone you could have a side load garage, but they'd only be required to be 13 feet off an adjacent, a sidewalk on that side load street? See what I'm saying? You're on a corner.
That's not how side loads normally.
I don't think that's how it works.
Okay.
you still
You've
have,
changed
I may
the
be.
layout
That's what I'm
now.
saying is I'm
It just means you have to do a 90 after you pull in.
right. I understand.
Right.
Okay. So it's not really an issue. Is that right? Okay. Get it? What the house stagger?
Yeah, I think the house stagger should be, since we're giving them room in the back anyway, I think the house stagger should be 5 feet.
Minimum of 5 feet.
Instead of 2.
I have an opinion. I would. Yeah, I was. Gonna
I
say-
have an opinion.
I know you do. I like it.
I said that, yeah. So, does anybody else care
5
to
feet.
join
Anyone?
in adding the recommendation that the front setback be increased to 5 feet?
Yeah, I'll agree with
Wait a minute. Setback or stagger?
Stagger.
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 that. Stagger.
does the product fit then?
Yeah, I think that may be boxing too much into a corner. I mean, there may be some scenarios where that may not be appropriate, and to say you've got to do it is.
Tell me the scenario where that wouldn't.
Well,
be
for example,
appropriate.
it could end up in kind of a checkerboard pattern instead of something that's kind of random. In other words, to hit 5 feet every time, you got to be going 5 feet one way or 5 feet the other.
They're set up to do minimum 2 feet now, so what's the difference?
Because 2 feet, you can go plus 2 feet, plus 2 feet, plus 2 feet, minus 2, minus
yeah,
4.
2 and 4.
You could have it look somewhat random rather than we're here, and then 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 we're here, and that's the only way it fits. Does that make
So you're
sense?
restricting
Well, it's
the
not-
amount of the stagger.
I mean,
by
5 feet, I can see that looking kind of goofy.
Yeah.
We could try to reword it. I mean, if you're worried about 2 feet, 2 feet, 2 feet, 2 feet, you know, I mean,
Well,
that's
that's
what you're
where
worried about. That
it looks like that's where it's going to end
But
up.
you could go 2
I mean,
feet, 2 feet.
You don't have to.
2
If the increment, the allowed increment for staggering is not only 2 feet.
Right, I understand.
It could be
5.
5
But if
feet,
you
5 feet, 7 feet, 12.
Exactly.
Right.
As long as you leave it at 2 feet or 3 feet. If you make
Your
it
increments
5,
of 2
it
feet.
has to be greater than or equal to 5.
No, it could still be 5 feet, 6 feet, 7 feet, or whatever.
Yeah, just a minimum of 5.
I guess
Yeah,
based on that,
anyways,
I'm neutral toward it now. So
Now,
I'll take a straw vote.
I understand.
They're big homes, they're going to look like rows, so I don't think it's going to make much difference. Any difference.
I'd say we
And they're going to put, and we also have requirements that they can't put similar homes
Right.
near each other anyway,
Well,
so,
they
I mean,
are.
I would be,
Okay, so
I just threw it out there. That's.
so to leave it alone.
I'd
Raise your
like it
hand.
to be contained. If you'd like
To
to
leave it
not
alone?
contain it,
Who votes to leave it alone?
yeah.
Leave it alone.
No,
at this
James.
point, no James.
There's 5.
Okay.
Leave it alone.
5 said no.
Anything else?
I'm missing something big.
Oh, we need the lights still.
Oh, the lights.
Still gotta go back to the lights.
Again, without micro managing it down to the exact kind of light, if it's the right kind of light, I have no objection. My objection is always the wrong kind of lights, the hundreds of lumens coming into bedrooms.
Yeah, I hate that too.
In our neighborhood and things like that. So if it's the right kind of lights, I'd straw vote it up.
I think we were convincing ourselves we've got that covered with the code. So.
Yeah,
Changed.
We've tried really hard.
The lighting standards in town have
Years
changed
ago.
since Sagamore was
right.
Okay.
built,
Let alone Rock Creek.
Candles,
for better or for worse.
downlights.
Okay, another
Okay.
straw vote, just to get everybody.
So I can,
So,
What I don't know what
in favor of
favor of the
3.
staff
I mean,
recommendation.
if
2 and 3 is.
Add light.
2 is the mid-block, 3 is the park lighting.
Okay, so item 2, add mid-block street lights to 6th and 8th Avenue. Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. And
Wait,
Hang
what?
on, it's just-
I didn't.
Add mid-block?
This is the staff
Yeah.
recommendation.
Yeah,
Add
number
mid-block.
2.
Add mid-block street lights to 6th and 8th Avenue.
Sorry, yes.
Yes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
5.
Okay.
5.
So 2. And 3. Add pedestrian lights in Central Park area at the intersection of the paths midway along the Crusher Fine Trail.
And midway.
That's what it said.
2 things.
And
Oh, and
So it's
midway
2
along.
spots.
Right. And sorry. And midway along the Crusher Fine Trail. Everybody on board with staff recommendation?
and those are the short lights, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One,
low
It's really
lights.
got to be the right kind.
Well, we'll have to
2, 3,
specify.
4.
that's what pedestrian lighting means.
That's
Yeah,
what-
because in our neighborhood, they're awful. They just pass out.
Appropriate. What kind of lights we
They
have?
don't louver down.
Okay.
They're not pedestal lights?
They're pedestal colors.
Minor technical red lines, resolution to the mineral rights.
That's for the preliminary plat.
Cone?
There's probably one.
Does anybody have, so are we done now with the,
Yes, all right.
Just all right.
Okay.
are we done now with the,
Everything.
no, we're not.
I get a good deal on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice try, huh?
And then it just shines.
So the preliminary plan development, we're done with, but are we
Well, no, we have to
done
make a
with
motion.
the, are we done with the PPD?
Well, theoretically.
Okay, and then, so then we have to talk about the preliminary plat.
Can we do a motion
Well, we have
on
to do a
the
motion.
We have to,
PPD
yeah, we
first.
have to have a motion whether you recommend the PPD, CDP to the board or not.
This was all in preparation for doing the second of three motions.
Okay.
Buy into that?
Yeah, why can't we? We
We
don't
haven't
have to
done
do
it.
it now, though. We don't have to listen to them. We can talk about the rest of it and then come back and do all of them together if you want.
If the chair would
Two different
entertain a motion.
That said, move to recommend approval of the preliminary plan development zone district plan for Coal Creek Crossing to the Board of Trustees with the following conditions.
Go through these.
Read those
Do our
out.
straw polls.
Yeah, okay, so
Cover that.
item one,
Put it on notes.
lot coverage,
Thank you.
45%, right?
Correct.
Lighting levels per staff recommendations,
Oh, I didn't
number
vote for
2
that.
and 3.
Correct.
Park, the park connection across Coal Creek, the trail
Trail
connection, sorry, the trail connection.
Across to the
Coal-
park.
To the park across Coal Creek. The park landscaping, as we mentioned, that would
No, that was,
be compatible with the with
Surrounding.
Surrounding
native
areas.
Native grass.
grasses. The town liability issue related to the water for basements, wells, and so on.
Injured parties made whole, not by the time.
The streetscape to match. Oh, then we're back to the streetscape to match Coal Creek Drive.
correct.
The building the trail on the south side of to the town standards.
Track that, yeah.
And is that it? House. Is there one more?
That's all of them.
Should you put minor
Yeah,
technical
and then
corrections?
First one,
And
The
minor
first
technical
one,
and red line corrections.
the
as identified
midline,
by
red
staff.
line corrections, because we have a couple of,
Yep.
Make it simple.
So I have a motion. I have a motion.
Wait, what about all the ones that were already in the plan? We talked about these ones already?
We did.
Okay, I wasn't listening, sorry.
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Prestisator. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed?
Could you say how many?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go back.
do it again.
All in
1,
favor.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All opposed? 3. McCool, McGinnis, Rochelle, Ripmaster. So, okay. Okay, the motion to recommend approval passes. Now we're on to review of the preliminary plat, case PP-2009-1. Discussion regarding the preliminary plat.
Hey, Fred, I'm curious about, on page 7 of the staff report, the bolded thing where it says, feedback from affected residents. No feedback was received by the town prior to the hearing. Help me understand if hours and hours were spent at the board listening to feedback from people say this doesn't work, it doesn't fit. How come we ended up with a report that says no feedback was received?
That was based on this application.
Yeah, and Rochelle was talking about the last year's application.
I see.
So there was no feedback at the concept plan review from anybody?
Nobody showed up because they didn't know what was happening.
At the concept plan review, back in April,
And wouldn't that be included as part of this?
well, that was before the formal submittal of the application. You're right, we could have included,
But when else, when else could public have commented? And there's no
well, we
other.
sent out letters prior to the public hearing to those residents.
So I think, not that it matters a lick what I think, but if we had hours and hours of public comment on the very same project by the very same developers last year, then it would make sense that people probably felt like they made their point then.
Well,
So and maybe that would have been good
you
to
could
include.
conclude that in this as
But
a
it's not the
logical.
same
It's
thing.
logical, but it's
Maybe
they
we
were
have to deal with
satisfied.
the application as it's presented to us.
Right, that's
And
true.
you can't
Okay, yeah,
conclude that.
that's
You
true.
need to be considering everything that was submitted to you in this application. What the public has stated in the past is not up for, I guess, discussion in consideration of this application.
Sure,
We
I
have
get
to
it.
keep it.
Is what is discussed at the comp plan review of this plan up for discussion?
Of this plan, yes, but the previous, I guess what I'm trying to say to you is that what was submitted to you at this hearing and through staff reports and whatnot is what you can consider. What was stated at a previous hearing for a separate application can't be considered.
It says no feedback. Does that mean if you had received emails regarding that, would that have been noted? Okay.
And I
Or-
can state that we had,
just trying to understand.
to my knowledge, 3 residents come into town hall, review the plans, but provided no comment
Okay.
based on that review.
Let's go, I was just checking.
Can staff,
They had submitted comments, we would include those.
can you comment, or someone on staff comment about it says resolution to mineral rights issue, just give a little background into that.
I can take a shot at it. The developer, I mean, the attorneys, the town attorneys said that the mineral rights people need to be contacted again, and they apparently have been. And we also have, I believe, we've gotten some comment back from their attorney, and there's still some issues that need to be resolved between the mineral rights owner and the applicant. And so our recommendation, our condition is that this needs to be resolved, and I assume it's meant to be prior to reviewing a final plat.
Correct.
I have a question actually about the irrigation easement. Is it prudent to have the easement run adjacent to the developable lots? In the case of lots 11, 10, and 9, they actually touch the lot line. The easement does. And, well, I just wondering, there seems to be a fair amount of room in Tract E to just give a little bit more buffer there.
That's a good comment. Maybe, I don't know.
Well,
maybe
you may have a slope issue, right? A grade issue. Thanks for the hand gestures. I understand. My question really was not significantly. I'm just suggesting.
Right.
You know.
Well, I think that's a comment well noted. I mean, I think our engineers will, once we get to the final plat, they'll also have the engineering for the whole deal. And
I'm
at that
thinking-
point, that the easements will be related to the engineering of the thing.
Right, and I'm thinking about the dewatering potential issues. I assume we'd also don't want potential dewatering system that could theoretically need to be maintained to be in conflict with the ditch easement necessarily. If you can create some
Right.
buffer for an under drain system or dewatering, may make sense.
Yeah, that whole thing about how these pipes or how this stuff is separated is going to come up at the final engineering stage. Just like when you're dealing with the utilities have to be dewatered or whatever, all of that.
Sure.
There's going to be all kinds of discussions about that engineering at the final development.
I just bring it up because right now I see it's adjacent. So.
You're right. Yeah, it's a good comment.
Anything else? Any other comments on the plat itself?
Anybody not like the way the lots look?
Yeah, well, that's-
They're too square. They're too rectangle.
I had one.
Can we stagger them?
I had one that I've suggested to them is that there's no block. We should have there should be block 1, or if they're going to do a a phase thing, you could have possibly, and they call out 3 phases, you could have theoretically 3 blocks, but it doesn't make any difference to me how they do it, but they should, for legal purposes, and maybe their surveyor has an argument against this, but it's normally block 1, lot 1 through 53.
Right.
So that's a small thing, but it's part of
Even if
normal
it's all
legal
one
description.
lot?
Pardon me?
Or even if it's all one block?
Yeah, it can be all one block. I mean,
It's just a
technically
terminology.
you can do that.
You still want it to say block 1 then?
Okay. Seems easy enough.
It's
As
just,
opposed to these overall numbers.
Does that
Well,
fall under
numbers
minor
are
technical
fine.
and red line
you're
corrections,
just
or do you need us
expanding
to?
Well, I have it as a red line, but I brought it up anyway.
expanding the legal description.
Then the legal, to what we're used to as a normal legal description for is lot and block.
Yeah.
And it can be just block 1. I don't care how they block it.
Right.
But if you have different blocks, then you only go so many lots in that block. You understand? Here, if it's block 1, it's all of them, it's all 53.
Could, I don't know if I'm opening a can of worms here, but I'm going to. Could there be some negotiation between the developer, or would they need to negotiate if Mr. Kuffner wanted to provide utilities to his lot subdivision to the southwest? That there's some utility easement that they would have to negotiate, or does he have other options to achieve some?
There need to be some easement.
But that would be up to him to negotiate that with the landowner or whatever, right?
You would need to work that between,
I'm just asking the question.
and that's,
So if I
What the
limit-
process it would be for Mr. Kuffner to achieve
Utilities to
some
start.
utility access at some point.
Yeah.
The question is, who picks up the cost? So the developer will bring it to a certain point, who's going to incur the cost from that point where the developer ends and where it needs to go to
Across the
provide
open
that?
space.
Well, but I think Mr. Kuffner is responsible for providing power to his lots. I don't think that's anyone else's responsibility.
And
The
it's
question is,
mainly-
it's just an
mainly,
access is what the only thing I'm asking.
What's in question here is
Sewer.
sewer service.
I mean, he's of the opinion that the town should provide him sewer and that he was promised. I mean,
Well,
But
the
that's-
town
that's
engineers
opinion.
could provide some tap or extension of an existing sewer system that really becomes property of the town once it's developed, right?
Correct.
That he could eventually tap into if he chose to. Is that, it could be engineered that way, theoretically. Okay.
Does anybody, and
But
this,
I was just talking about easement. It's really
Right,
related
I
to
understand.
sorry.
so George has come many times saying the town said I'd have water and I'd have sewer on my property, and I still don't have it.
He's got water.
So, okay, so he doesn't have sewer.
He does not have sewer.
Is this a case of George remembering something that may or may not have happened, or is this a case of he ought to be having it because it's on the record someplace? Or did we
There's some
conveniently make sure not to write any of that stuff down?
Honestly, I have no idea. He feels that the town had promised him that.
It kind of makes sense. I mean, that they'd get it there.
I'm sorry?
It kind of makes sense that they would get it to his, we would get it to his property.
Service.
You know, since he was part of the original town, and the whole reason for Rock Creek coming into being was so that we could provide water and sewer to the town. And, you know, there he is, in the town and all. So, you know, I think it's important to, not to hold these guys up or this discussion for that, but, you know, we need to.
but if this development prevents that from happening,
That's a problem.
that's a problem.
Right. I would agree.
So we need to make sure then that some sort of mechanism is left.
Well, not necessarily a tap.
Well, no, just
He needs
like,
access to.
Access to-
He needs-
access
yeah,
to-
he
That's
needs
what
access to the
I'm
sewer
bringing it up
system.
as an easement or
so that
whatever.
means a pipe has to be left hanging off somewhere in the vicinity of tract G.
Well,
Yeah,
Right,
that's correct.
at the end of, outside of Charles Street there.
Track G, is Track G a developable lot?
No,
No,
it says open space.
I would think it
it
is.
is not.
It's okay.
Can I borrow your glasses?
I know how it goes, man. I only read every other word.
Well, right, but let's say that the sewer ran down Charles Street to the west, and it could be stubbed where theoretically it could serve.
It needs not to end up in somebody's yard or under somebody's house, the end of the sewer, right? He's got to be able to get at it.
So I guess my question
But
is,
this is something
there
that-
some access easement to utilities in Charles Street through Tract G?
Well,
Is
and,
that something we would,
but wait, though, that's not even the finished question.
or
Right.
whatever, I don't
The
know.
finished question is, since we're out there anyway, and it makes sense that George should have sewer show up at his place, you know, why not, while it's being developed, run the tap to his lot 15 or whatever it is?
On the town's expense.
Why should the town pay for that?
Because the town owes him a sewer tap.
Because if the town's going to
It's
pay
the
for
same
it
way.
A
anyway.
tap, a
20
tap is
years.
only access to the sewer system. It doesn't say they have to take it all the way to his lot. There's no
No.
obligation to do that.
Well, that's not true.
I think that's up for, I think that is George's complaint, and I think it's not in our purview to
I would
discuss
agree.
that. However, I mean,
I'm
my
talking
opinion
about,
is
Commission, guys.
that,
I'm talking about
you know, I mean-
access, utility access, and my question, I guess, is really specifically related to some extension of the sewer easement to any adjacent lots around this property.
Developable lots.
And I don't know the answer to it either. I just don't, if we should make a comment so
Well, and
staff
more,
can research
somewhat
that.
more importantly is we're not, if I understand this, we're not recommending this one to the board. We're actually
you're
doing an
making-
approval on the
Making
plat.
we're preliminary approval of the
So,
Right.
anything in terms, like you said, in terms of easements specific to the plat,
Right, we need to leave an easement.
My question is, I don't know if that's I don't know if engineering wise if that's the correct place for the easement. It could be up here, I don't know.
You could simply state additional research related to the necessity of an utility easement for the Kufner subdivision.
Additional research doesn't mean that it needs to be left done. It just means research will be done. So, okay, I thought about it. No, I don't want
We're
to do it.
exploring
I
the
think so.
possibility.
We're going to see a final plat, right? We're going to see a final plat, right?
Right.
So this is an opportunity for us to make these comments so it can appear in a final plat.
Okay.
and more importantly, the board
So I
has
think
to get into
so having the
this.
recommendation.
No, we're approving.
Well, no, I mean, the board has to get into this issue to decide whether this is even an issue
Right,
for us to worry
yeah.
about.
I
So
think that's
we're
the
kinda-
thing is that we need to make sure that the board is aware of the fact that Kufner needs sewer at his place, and right now there's not a way to do it, and if we don't provide it now, there's not going to be a good way except to drag it all the way down 76th Street, and then who's going to do that?
I guess more specifically, since this isn't, as I understand the process, this particular piece isn't going before the board, can we simply have or maybe they're just going to have a consent note that
Give it
we
in the
approved
final
it,
plat.
but that we're going to pass along a comment to them, however we're able to do that,
By the
that they
time we
need to
approve the final
address.
plat, we need to know what they plan to do with George's
And I
thing.
would
Right.
suggest you put that in your condition, in your motion.
For the
Okay.
preliminary.
We probably need to do both, though. I just want to make sure somehow it's getting in front of the board.
Is it the only?
Well,
is it the only subdivision?
This will, if, whatever recommendation you make and conditions, even for the plat, will go to the board.
They have the option of calling it up if they have a problem. So
Yeah,
so
but
it
I know
will-
how consent agenda stuff goes, so this looks like one that kind of goes, oh, they needed that.
So if the condition is in, then there would be a requirement.
Well, no, they could,
If we add the condition
the
now,
condition is pretty vague, though. The real decision that needs to be made is being made by the board, right?
But if the board does not, if they leave it on the consent, and they don't pull it off,
They don't
and
see
we've put a condition on there
then
that,
that's,
then
Well, staff still has to
then there's a
react to it.
responsibility on the developer to make sure that there's a tap accessible
No,
wherever roughly we say, is that?
no.
Or not a tap, but access to the sewer, not a tap, but access to
Yeah.
the, that an access to the sewer system would be available?
Mhm.
I'm getting head nods of yes over here,
Yes.
so that's what I understood.
Yep.
So Jason, I want to make sure.
Really? Okay.
So this is the time to do
But
that.
that's different from what you were saying before. I mean, you were talking about researching the issue.
right.
No, we're not
So this would
recommending
be-
it.
No, I know, we're approving.
We would be,
But
we would make the
See,
approval
we're not-
That's
condition.
based on, but it's still going to be,
But we saw
it's
the
going
final
to be
plat,
engineered,
so-
and these things would be ironed out in the final plot,
Right,
Okay.
right?
exactly.
We're just saying there should be an easement for access to the Cutner, for a utility easement for access to the Cutner subdivision.
Okay.
Or- Right, is that?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's what I would say the condition we would put in here. In the approval of the
should be.
preliminary plat, there should be,
Yeah.
does that make sense?
Do you have anything to add?
But then as we get into the sewer design, we need to also make sure that we're leaving space. And I think really it needs to be taken across. And see, that's the other thing. Right now, the it's not contiguous anywhere.
Yeah.
You gotta go across Carlson's to get.
Why don't you go across the open space? Oh, I see, because of that.
Yeah, no,
You
Stretch.
gotta go across
Who is
Carlson
this?
to get to Carlson.
yeah.
This is Carlson too?
This is Carlson's space right here. All this.
Well,
This is track
all
G.
we can talk about is an access easement through track to G. Okay?
Chairman Craycraft, it might help Rick
Yeah.
resolve this with our
Sure.
Hey, but so here's.
Yeah, I think if you just make the condition that an adequate sewer easement is provided for on the preliminary plat to be able
That's
to
fine.
service the Cuffner subdivision through tract G or equivalent, that would cover it.
Right, and then at some point, you may have to negotiate something through Carlson or something to get there, but that's
That's
outside
beyond
the
this,
scope
yeah.
of this.
Right.
This review, okay.
As long as this property
So that would be
provides an
that would be the
adequate
condition, the way Rick.
Did you get, so, yeah, can we just do
What he said.
What he said.
Straw poll, what he said.
Yeah, well, I'm for that.
Okay.
Anybody else got anything? Can somebody help me understand why lot 28 continues to exist and doesn't carry the trail through to the edge of the property on the west?
To what?
To what?
The fence?
To a fence?
We don't know yet.
Yeah, but this is junkyard, I mean,
It's a
storage area. It's here, right? This is storage. Is this Cuffner?
Oh, that's those guys. Oh, yeah.
That's Monroe Center, what I'm.
So that's the answer then, because there's already a house on the other side. That's all you had to say.
Okay, so without any other comments, any other comments?
Let's vote.
Motion? Anyone? Anyone?
Your turn.
You don't need me?
I'll make a motion. So I'd like to make a motion that we approve resolution number PC-2, Series 2009, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the Town of Superior approving the preliminary plat, Coal Creek Crossing in case number PP-2009-1 with the following conditions. First, that any red line prints be fixed.
There you go.
They're on the motion. Right?
Minor technical and red line corrections as identified by staff shall be made. Resolution number 2, resolution of the mineral rights issue with Rocky Mountain Fuels and whomever. And 3, that red line prints, resolution of the mineral right. Oh, you have a 4th one as well?
Which I already brought up, but go ahead. Keep going.
Okay, so now I'm all confused. 3,
Three is-
that we leave adequate easement for the Cuffner sewer debacle.
And I would like that. I would like that to read utility easement, not sewer easement.
Right, utility easement.
Okay, so it's open to electrical, water,
Cable TV.
gas, cable,
Perhaps.
I mean, whatever the adequate
Fiber optics.
utility easement is to those to the lots. Okay,
Future.
non-exclusive. Thank you.
Non-exclusive.
What he said.
What he said. Non-exclusive.
He says
There
that
you go.
stuff a lot.
Yes.
So.
Right. Non-exclusive utility easement.
And then you had a.
And the other one was related to the easement to.
Do we want to say through track G or, how do you put that?
Through track G.
Through track G or other, how did you say that?
Through track G or equivalent.
Or-
As necessary to effectively service the
To
property.
adequately, I mean, that's the point, to adequately service the Cuffner
the subdivision.
subdivision.
Cuffner subdivision.
Okay.
And then the last one was, I guess we didn't straw poll this though, was the
That's okay.
my comment regarding the
The ditch
the
easement.
ditch easement being adjacent to lots 11, 10, and 9.
Right,
To be reviewed by staff for engineering.
Staff should review and potentially move that ditch
Yes,
easement.
exactly.
Two additional, in whereas clause number 2 and whereas clause number 3 of this resolution, I would just change the final plat references to preliminary plat.
Yes. Okay, that.
All right, okay. So does everybody understand what I just moved?
Good legal help
Yes.
is fine these days.
You did
The
good.
black number are useful, or is that we just tell them?
Oh, yeah.
Is that
And
part of
number
that one?
5, that we add a block number to make the labeling of the lots consistent with standard nomenclature.
Standard town block nomenclature. Is that
Lot.
Legal
block.
descriptions.
Legal
whatever.
descriptions.
Oh, yeah, standard legal, just property legal, yeah, whatever.
That's fine.
okay? That's the motion.
I'll second.
A second, yep, by Commissioner Hinkle.
Questions,
any
comments,
discussion?
qualms, quips,
Stop,
queries?
stop. Any discussion? All in favor? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All opposed? 3. Motion passes.
Vote against your own motion.
Oh, yes. Of those that made,
Yes.
that would be Commissioner McCool, Commissioner McGinnis, and Commissioner Whitmaster.
Good.
Right? Okay, so the motion passes. Moving on
That's it.
to the next item on the agenda, staff announcements and miscellaneous.
Just briefly,
Good night, gentlemen, thanks. Congratulations, or something.
our November 3rd meeting, I have a scheduling conflict, and Fred also has a scheduling conflict. He's out of the state, I believe.
No,
so.
I'm not out of state, but I'm out of.
He's out of contact, let's just say that. So our recommendation is we forego until our second meeting in November.
What are we supposed to do on the 3rd?
We were going to do land use code, continue
Okay.
with land use code.
So should we, so are you saying you want to cancel that meeting?
We would like to, yes.
Do we have to vote on that?
No, no, the
We just-
chair can.
Okay. Nixon,
So the next one would be
the
December.
17th. Okay. Anything else?
Getting to Baskin Robbins. I don't know if anybody heard that.
No,
What's
where?
that?
Where the Unleashed is.
Yeah.
Oh, is that right?
Unleashed is
Space
leaving
in the Rock Creek Village. They signed a lease and planned to open by the end of the year.
Is that a Jack in the Box they're building over next to
have
It
that.
is a Jack in the
Broomfield?
Box. That's in Broomfield.
They're building a Jack
Oh,
in the
is that
Box
what
next
that
to the
is?
city
Yeah.
care thing.
There's
Really?
two
I didn't know
things
Jack in the
going.
Box was still.
Right under those big apartments.
Two
Good
things
store,
going on
nice
right
programs
now.
going.
Too many conversations, it's
Sorry.
on tape.
Sorry.
There's two, the Jack in the Box and then Tire Center is also going there.
Where?
Another tire center?
Yeah,
First,
Next to Big O? Or near, down that way?
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Right,
gotta
next
do it.
next to the Jack in the Box.
You need more tires, yeah. So tell me, if you can, what's up with the rotary that's now taken 5 months to build?
So final paving's planned for this Saturday.
That's not,
Weather dependent, of course. That we had some delays with weather. We had some delays with lighting, with Excel, temporary lighting. We had to, permanent lighting's not ready, so we had to structure agreement with Excel for temporary lighting, so that caused a delay. And then we had some delays in surveying with one of the subcontractors out there that had to be rectified, which caused additional delays. So that's where the delays came in, but
so who's paying for that?
Contractor, right?
Is the subcontractor paying for that?
correct.
So, and it's gonna be done when?
Can you adjust those light time things?
Well,
They
the reason, so the story behind the length of the timing on the lights is, there seems to be a long delay for both reds. And the reason for that is to try to get
Gotta clear the
cycles
traffic.
through, because they take longer to get through. So that's where the additional delay comes from.
So, say we don't get a foot of snow tonight, and it doesn't hang around till the weekend. When is this thing done?
Saturday.
Opened on Saturday?
Have
We're
they done
done with the
curbs
paving
on
and we're opening it on Saturday?
Did they neck down Colton already? Or is that
Uh,
a second phase?
I don't know the answer to that.
I want to be able to get off.
But open on Saturday night.
Yeah, so,
Theoretically.
so then if I'm coming down from 128, I can turn onto Colton again. And if I'm coming down from the Ridge or Rock Creek Parkway on McCaslin, I can turn onto Colton again.
Right now, McCaslin is planned on being closed from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Saturday.
Yeah.
So that's the plan.
To pave it.
Yeah, I
Are
understand.
they pulling the paving equipment off of the Rock Creek paving project to finish this project? And when is that going to be done?
There's a Rock Creek paving project?
Oh, yeah.
They're
All that the roads south of Colton are being paved.
They're finalizing the punch list on that project. So,
There was one cul-de-sac that hadn't even been paved yet,
yeah.
at least that I saw.
Okay.
That's kind of where that's.
It's a different contractor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it? Anything else? Okay, thank you.